يصلاها مذموما مدحورا ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا كلا نمد هؤلاء وهؤلاء من عطاء ربك وما كان عطاء ربك محظورا انظر كيف فضلنا بعضهم على بعض وللآخرة أكبر درجات وأكبر تفضيلا لا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتقعد مذموما مخذولا وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة وقل رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا ربكم أعلم بما في نفوسكم إن تكونوا صالحين فإنه كان للأوابين غفورا وآت ذا القربى حقه والمسكين وابن السبيل ولا تبذر تبذيرا إن المبذرين كانوا إخوان الشياطين وكان الشيطان لربه كفورا وإما تعرضن عنهم ابتغاء رحمة من ربك ترجوها فقل لهم قولا ميسورا ولا تجعل يدك مغلولة إلى عنقك ولا تبسطها كل البسط فتقعد ملوما محسورا إن ربك يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر إنه كان بعباده خبيرا بصيرا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم خشية إملاق نحن نرزقهم وإياكم إن قتلهم كان خطأ كبيرا ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ومن قتل مظلوما فقد جعلنا لوليه سلطانا فلا يسرف في القتل إنه كان منصورا ولا تقربوا مال اليتيم إلا بالتي هي أحسن حتى يبلغ أشده وأوفوا بالعهد إن العهد كان مسؤولا وأوفوا الكيل إذا كلتم وزنوا بالقسطاس المستقيم ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إنك لن تخرق الأرض ولن تبلغ الجبال طولا كل ذلك كان سيئه عند ربك مكروها ذلك مما أوحى إليك ربك من الحكمة ولا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتلقى في جهنم ملوما مدحورا أفأصفاكم ربكم بالبنين واتخذ من الملائكة إناثا إنكم لتقولون قولا عظيما ولقد صرفنا في هذا القرآن ليذكروا وما يزيدهم إلا نفورا قل لو كان معه آلهة كما يقولون إذا لابتغوا إلى ذي العرش سبيلا سبحانه وتعالى عما يقولون علوا كبيرا تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا وإذا قرأت القرآن جعلنا بينك وبين الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة حجابا مستورا وجعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإذا ذكرت ربك في القرآن وحده ولوا على أدبارهم نفورا نحن أعلم بما يستمعون به إذ يستمعون إليك وإذ هم نجوى إذ يقول الظالمون إن تتبعون إلا رجلا مسحورا مسحورا انظر كيف ضربوا لك الأمثال فضلوا فلا يستطيعون سبيلا وقالوا أإذا كنا عظاما ورفاتا أإنا لمبعوثون خلقا جديدا قل كونوا حجارة أو حديدا أو خلقا مما يكبر في صدوركم فسيقولون من يعيدنا قل الذي فطركم أول مرة فسينغضون إليك رؤوسهم ويقولون متاه قل عسى أن يكون قريبا يوم يدعوكم فتستجيبون بحمده وتظنون إن لبثتم إلا قليلا وقل لعبادي يقولوا التي هي أحسن إن الشيطان ينزغ بينهم إن الشيطان كان للإنسان عدوا مبينا ربكم أعلم بكم إن يشأ يرحمكم أو إن يشأ يعذبكم وما أرسلناك عليهم وكيلا وربك أعلم بمن في السماوات والأرض ولقد فضلنا بعض النبيين على بعض وآتينا داود زبورا قل ادعوا الذين زعمتم من دونه فلا يملكون كشف الضر عنكم ولا تحويلا أولئك الذين يدعون يبتغون إلى ربهم الوسيلة أيهم أقرب ويرجون رحمته ويخافون عذابه إن عذاب ربك كان محذورا وإن من قرية إلا نحن مهلكوها قبل يوم القيامة أو معذبوها عذابا شديدا كان ذلك في الكتاب مسطورا وما منعنا أن نرسل بالآيات إلا أن كذب بها الأولون وآتينا ثمود الناقة مبصرة فظلموا بها وما نرسل بالآيات إلا تخويفا وإذ قلنا لك إن ربك أحاط بالناس وما جعلنا الرؤيا التي أريناك إلا فتنة للناس والشجرة الملعونة في القرآن ونخوفهم فما يزيدهم إلا طغيانا كبيرا وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس قال أأسجد لمن خلقت طينا قال أرأيتك هذا الذي كرمت علي لئن أخرتني إلى يوم القيامة لأحتنكن ذريته إلا قليلا قال اذهب فمن تبعك منهم فإن جهنم جزاؤكم جزاء موفورا واستفزز من استطعت منهم بصوتك وأجلب عليهم بخيلك ورجلك وشاركهم في الأموال والأولاد وعدهم وما يعدهم الشيطان إلا غرورا إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان وكفى بربك وكيلا ربكم الذي يزجي لكم الفلك في البحر لتبتغوا من فضله إنه كان بكم رحيما وإذا مسكم الضر في البحر ضل من تدعون إلا إياه فلما نجاكم إلى البر أعرضتم وكان الإنسان كفورا
إن الحمد لله نحمد ونستعين ونستغفر ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد Inshallah, today or tonight, our lesson, our plan related to verbs or af'al from the past previous lessons. We had learned about fi'lu al-madi wal-mudara wa amr. We learned about fi'lu al-madi, al-mudara. Tonight, inshallah, we'll go over al-amr. Al-amr is the commandment verb. The commandment verb in the Arabic language is very important. I had noted and mentioned from our previous classes about the commandment verb, the amr, is that the commandment verb, for its conjugation, it is very important that we understand al-fi'lu mudara, that we understand the conjugation for the present tense verb and conjugating the present tense verb, because the structure of the commandment verb is based from the conjugation of the present tense verb. The first dhamma on the radical or on the pattern, the first letter, the first vowel on the first letter was going to help you with structuring the commandment verb, inshallah. Reading from the book Arabic Made Easy, which is the 27th lesson of the book, Fi'lu al-Amr, the commandment verb. Fi'lu al-Amr is imperative mood, which means commandment. The imperative mood of the English verb, it indicates a command. Al-Fi'lu al-Amr is constructed from al-Fi'lu mudara al-Hadir. Is constructed from the present tense verb of the one, or we say the second person, according to the following rules. The haraka or vowels on the last letter and put the sukun on it. Thus, for example, taf'alu becomes taf'alu. Then remove the sign of mudari, name the letter, which is ta. If after dropping the sign of the mudari, the first letter is sakin or silent, then the prefix and alif is added with a kasra. Thus we have if'al. From fa'ala or from taf'alu, you have the verb if'al. Thus we know if'al, you, idhab. For example, idhab is from the verb dhahaba yadhabu, idhab. Fataha yaftahu, we have iftah. So dhahaba yadhabu, the mudari, yadhabu, you get idhab. Yaftahu, you get iftah. So in the commandment verb, you add alif to the beginning of the word, and then you add the original letters of the verb. Now the vowel depends upon the vowel that is written on the mudara. Let's continue. If the second radical of the mudara it has dhamma, the alif is written with dhamma. Thus the amr, the commandment verb, for example, tandiru or yandiru, when you make the commandment verb, you put on the alif dhamma. Undur. Tandiru or yandiru, tandiru, undur, undur. So we notice here, it's not like idhab. The first letter, for example, the vowel, tandiru or yandiru, nadara yandiru, undur, undur. So the mudara, undur, you add to the first letter and the middle letter of the actual original three letters of the verb. the middle letter, you had Dhamma. Unzur. Tadkhulu. Tadkhulu, which means you enter. Udkhul, which means enter you. It's a commandment form. From tandiru, unzur, which means to wait or to look at. Tadkhulu or yadkhulu, you get udkhul, enter. The next one, yaktubu, from the verb kataba, yaktubu, here written taktubu, but I'm going to say yaktubu. Kataba, yaktubu, al-mudara, yaktubu. We have ukhtub, the commandment verbs, which means anta taktub, you write. We have here in the hidden pronoun with the commandment verb. We have a hidden pronoun, which is anta. There is no conjugation for the commandment verb for the first and the third person. There's no conjugation of a commandment form for the first person, the one who is speaking, and al-ghaib, the third person. Continue reading. When I write the particular lesson, I will add these examples when I write it down in the notes on this particular page in a few minutes, inshallah. Continue reading. The last letter, a noon, of the second person masculine. The second person masculine. The dual and the plural of the second person feminine, singular, and dual must be dropped, related to the commandment verb. If you're reading here and you figure or you think this is a little complicated or too hard to figure out, don't worry. When we write down the pattern, which you see on the next page, then you're going to understand everything, inshallah. So the noon is dropped in the second person feminine plural. It is retained. Thus the amr from taf'alani becomes if'ala. Taf'aluna become if'alu. Taf'alina, which means anti taf'alina, becomes if'ali. Taf'alna become if'alna. So on and so forth. When the noon of the second person plural is dropped and aleph is placed after the waw. Say that again. This is a very important note. When the noon of the second person for the plural is dropped, aleph is added. From yaf'aluna, yaf'aluna becomes if'alu. And you've written, just like writing the commandment verb for the past tense for the plural. Dhahabu. We know when we write it down, the form, we know they write the aleph at the end for the past and present, but it's reminding you for the commandment verb likewise for the second person of the commandment verb. So before I go and start writing, do anybody have any questions? There's some verbs, reading on, that there's not written a hamza on it. There's a certain exception. We'll learn about that later. For example, akada yaqidu khud. For example. Yes, but when I write the pattern out, everything's going to be seen. It's very easy. Don't stress that too much, but yes. But don't let it complicate you, because when I write out the pattern, you're going to see, oh, that's not even important. It is important, but you're going to see when we write out the pattern, that is easy to conjugate for the commandment verb. Anta. Anta if'al. Antuma. Use the other bathroom. Don't use it. That's why the door is closed. Use the other bathroom. Yes. Antuma. If'ala. I want to put the parentheses on the pronouns, the matter, because you don't have, it's not written. It's already implied in the verb. When you write the commandment verb, it is already applied. If'ala. Anti. Uh, if Ali. The dual, the same as the other. That's it. And that's what it's all with related to a tasrif, the conjugation of the commandment form. But as it was explained in the book, for example, there's a structure. So the structure related to the commandment verb is adding in the beginning aleph, and at the end adding sukun. All right, right? Adding aleph, adding aleph, and ending with sukun. At the end. That is the catch. To write the actual verb, to conjugate it, for example, we're going to take some verbs from our previous lesson. To do the commandment verb, to write the commandment verb, yeah. Which one? What's wrong with it? Excuse me, I'm back. So I'm gonna write some example. I've written down that if you write the commandment verb, it is a must you know the present tense verb. For example, past tense verb al-kharaja means he left. It is present tense is yakriju. Yakriju. Its commandment verb is going to be ukhruj. Ukhruj. Kharaja yakriju ukhruj. So you must know the second radical on the verb. On the present tense verb, the second radical, you must know the vowel on the second radical of the verb to make the commandment form of the verb. Kharaja yakhruju ukhruj. Dhahaba yadhabu idhhab. So now it takes some discussion. When I did, I'm not able to highlight, but when I did the conjugation for the commandment verb for yakruju, you notice the hamza, I put dhamma. The hamza, I've written dhamma. But normally, it would be kasra if it's not dhamma. So in the case, dhahaba yadhabu idhhab. Right? You notice I have kasra here, even though it's the second radical vowel is fatha. Normally, I write kasra. Give you another example. Jalasa, which means he sat. Yajlisu, commandment verb. Ijlis. Ijlis. جلس يجلس اجلس ساكن. Hope that is easy. خرج يخرج اخرج. عرف يعرف اعرف. To know اعرف. رجع, which means he returned. رجع يرجع ارجع. ضرب يضرب اضرب. اضرب, to strike, to hit. نصر ينصر انصر انصر. حسب يحسب احسب. سمع, he listened. سمع سمع يسمع اسمع, to listen. قطع يقطع اقطع. Now, there are some words that are exception. As I mentioned many times with rules in Arabic, there's always an exception to the rule. There's always what? An exception to the rule. So some words that are an exception to the rule, two words. أخذ أخذ يأخذ commandment form خذ خذ. Say this kid's all day. خذ. خذ. Exception to the rule. I said in Arabic, we always have a what? Some words are exception. There's something special about this particular letter. We haven't learned it yet. Weak letters. We learn this in the future. There's some letters in Arabic that have weak letters. And the weak letters in Arabic is Aleph, Waw, Aleph, Waw, and Ya. There's some weak letters. Related to hasaba, give me a second. Yes, hasiba, yahsabu. Because the present tense verb for hasaba is yahsabu. Hasaba, hasiba, yahsabu. So the commandment verb is sab, because we don't care nothing about the past tense verb when conjugating the commandment verb. We don't care nothing about the past tense verb. When it's about conjugating verbs, as you can see here, some of the past tense verbs, the vowel in the second letter, it's not like the same vowel of the present tense verb in the second letter. It's not the same. Like hasiba. Hasiba, fi'lu al-madi is the past tense verb. The present tense verb is ya'sabu. So when we conjugate the verb, we only care about the present tense. We don't care nothing about the past tense verb, how it looks like, where the vowel was at, because it has nothing to do with conjugating the commandment verb. What's only important for the commandment verb is knowing the mudara. Back to akada. So akala and ya'kulu, we have khul. There's some more, but the other ones I can't write it yet because we don't know nothing about commandment verbs yet. We know nothing about the commandment verbs. Let me just put the star here instead. Hey, you. Drink this. Yeah. Drink this. What's wrong? Your sinus all messed up. If you don't blow your nose. So our job is to be familiarized with this. This is our job. When you see what I have highlighted here, is just to memorize the pattern. That's all you care about. Memorizing the pattern. That's all we care about. Once you know the pattern, you can conjugate it no matter what. And to write the commandment form of the verb, you must know the what? The present tense verb conjugation. You must know it. If you don't know it, you cannot write the commandment verb. So this is why I always say that the past lessons are very, very important because they're related to the future lessons. I always say the lessons we learned in the past, they're very important for the future lessons. Any questions? Is any questions? Any questions? This lesson right here, the notes, I will add it right now, inshallah. To this link, to the page we are at. So Aleph will take either Dhamma or Kasra, yes. It usually is always Kasra. If the second radical of the Mudara is Fatha or Kasra, then the Aleph in the beginning will always be Kasra. Aleph in the beginning, always Kasra. If the second radical vowel is Dhamma, then that first, the Aleph in the beginning will have Dhamma. Yaqtubu, ukhtub. Yadhabu, idhab. Yajlisu, ijlis. Like this. Greedy, drink your juice. Come here. You're just full of mucus. Like this. Always have to remember with Arabic language, yalla. Always remember the Arabic language. Everything really is patterns. Everything is a pattern. And everything is a pattern and it has a rhythm to it. Everything is a pattern and it has a rhythm to it. Anything from vocabulary, come here. From vocabulary, open your mouth. You need some stuff in your nose. Go in the bathroom. Why? Because you got to clean out your nose. So all the patterns have a rhythm to them. Every pattern has a rhythm. Everything about Arabic grammar is about rules. Al-Qawaid, that's what they call it. Al-Qawaid al-Nahu. Al-Qawaid, al-Lugha Arabiya. It's rules. So once you have the pattern memorized, or we say the qawaid memorized, or qaida memorized, then you're good to go. There's nothing complicated about Arabic. So the commandment verbs are easy. There's a lot more to the commandment verbs. As we could look in the lesson, page 131, fi'l wa amr al-hadir. Right, and you notice in this jadwal, this little schedule thing they have, this little table they have. Not there, I'm sorry. Here, this one right here. So it says here on 131 going down, there are exceptions to the rule. We read that, I explained that. Let's keep on going. And it says, then it says, li yaf'al. So they have this particle now on the verb, lam. Let him go. Li yadhhabu. Let him go. These are known as al-amr al-ghaib, the commandment form of the verb for the third person. As I told you, there's no conjugation of the commandment verb for the third person. But this particular lesson right here, how they explain it to you, we're not really ready for that. Because first, we haven't really learned too much about conjugation. We just learned about conjugating the past tense verb, conjugating the present tense verb, a little bit about the commandment. This is a little bit later on. Liyaf'al, related to more of construction of a synthesis in Arabic. These are no al-amr al-ghaib, all right? This is probably the next thing you learn about commandment verbs. Al-amr al-ghaib, al-mudar al-ghaib, by the prefix lam. But there's conditions to this related to this lam, because this lam has many meanings and many usage in Arabic grammar. So they're saying that when the lam is used, that the noon is dropped. Right? When the lam is used, the noon is dropped. But I don't want to focus on this right now, because you could get this rule later on. It's not really the initial thing that's important right now for the beginning of understanding what is a commandment verb. I don't find it as the first lesson to learn. This is not the first lesson to learn about commandment verbs, except for a person who's studying Arabic in the Arabic Language Institute. Then it's a different story, a different situation. Learning Arabic every day or in a school setting, then it's a different setting. This setting right here online, as we're doing right now, is learning the patterns and the basic introduction, because the lam here makes the word a jism, and some things that are a jism get deleted in some cases. But we don't want to go through all of them, because there's other rules to this rule. This is not like something you throw in the beginning lesson teaching commandment verbs, because there's a lot of other things to this right here. And isn't the way you teach the lesson right here as I'm reading it, it's not giving that rule. It's justice. It's right. Because there's some more things to this lam. Because this lam on the verb has some other rules and uses for it. But you can familiarize it, what it says in the book. But no, that's not into that letter lam added to the particular verb. It has other meanings and uses for it in the Arabic language, which you should learn later on. This particular book, I'm just going through to give you some surface understanding about verbs, conjugation verbs. Because once we understand this and can conjugate the verbs, next thing we need to do is nahi, negations. Before we even go over negations, we didn't go over yet conjugating weak letter verbs. And we do that later on. Because now here in the lesson, which is teaching, lesson 28, with the moods, then it's talking about lamb. Now it's using lamb. All right? Now it's using lamb. Why are you using lamb here? Why they explain lamb in the section of commandment verbs? It's a little bit confusing. Anybody who read this or never studied Arabic before and then they start reading this, it becomes confusing for them. So this is why I'm not explaining the lessons according to how the book is saying it. But we will go over lamb. But lamb have other meanings, generally related outside of rules related to as-sarf or af'al, related to verbs that we haven't learned yet. Land of the possessive case, ownership of something, right? So we haven't really got too much into the lamb. But we will briefly go over some of these things, going over an, things like this. But I really want to go over this, to go over nahi and nafi, and to go over some particles that work with verbs. But I really care about this particular book is weak verbs, because that's the problem for a lot of peoples. Learn about weak verbs and conjugating weak verbs, and what is a weak letter, and what is a weak verb, and what is a weak letter in the verb. That's very important, because when it comes to its conjugations. All right, the other rules, as I'm scrolling down in the book right now and is looking at the other lessons coming in the future, some things we'll do, some things we will rush through, some things we will skip. But I want us to focus on verbs, everything related to verbs, because we learned nothing yet about two-letter verbs. We know nothing yet about two-letter verbs. All right, right here in this lesson, start introducing a little bit. Verbs that have 3 letters, verbs that have 4 letters, verbs that have 5 letters. And it's verbs that have 2 letters. Like marra. Marra has a shadda on it. It's really marrara, but they write a shadda on it. Marra. Madda. Then there's something called al-fa'il wa maf'ul, which needs to go over. Or ism al-fa'il. When you increase other letters on the verbs, as this lesson is fi'lu al-thulatha al-muzidu fihi, that you have 3-letter verbs, 3-letter verb, and it has an addition letter to it. So there's a lot of things more going with verbs. As I said, verbs is a subject on its own. فعل الثلاثة المزيد الباب تفعل التفعل. I'm just reading, I'm just going through. All I'm doing is skimming. As I said, when we look in the index of the book, the majority of the chapters in this book all talking about verbs. The majority of all the chapters in this book is talking about verbs. Right? Verbs are very important. If you don't understand verbs, you're not going to understand the Arabic language. If you understand verbs, understand it very good, the system about verbs, the categories about verbs, the chapters about verbs, or the qawaid related to verbs in Arabic, will make your Arabic language very strong. Why? Because most nouns come from a what? Verb. Istaghfara, coming from a verb. What form? What type of verb? Huh? Qassara al-bayt. Al-qassara al-bayta. Right? What type of verb is this? Qassara. And even this book, those type of form of verbs, because you have, I told you, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth forms of verbs, 7, 8. This book don't even touch it. So verbs are very essential. When you go to some dictionaries, like Al-Mawrid, Al-Hansware dictionary, you're looking up the verb, I'm looking up a noun by its what verb? You're looking up a noun, whatever, by its root which is a past tense verb. And they're going to show you in the hands where from that past tense verb, what is its conjugation for the mudara? They're going to show you all the other words that come from this verb that are nouns and adjectives. Not all of them, a lot of them. So verbs are very important. 4-letter verbs. I'm just going through. We just peek into the chapter because I want us to see why conjugating verbs are very important. The majority of the chapters about verbs. الفعل محموز. المحموز. The Hamza verb. Or Hamzatul verb in English. Some of these we'll learn, some of these we'll skip. We really want to learn about later on weak verbs. Here we go, lesson 37. Later on, not today, not tonight, but later on in the future. Weak verbs. Here you go. Weak verbs. Hurufu al-illa. Waw and ya. Waw and ya and alif. Weak letter verbs. All right? Because weak letter verbs, for the mudara, for the present tense verb, related to weak verbs, the weak verb, the weak letter becomes another letter. It changes. Here we go. For example, walada means to beget or to was born. Yalidu, the waw was deleted here. Waqafa, yaqifu, the waw was deleted here. Wada'a, yada'u, the waw was deleted here. The waw from the past tense is deleted in the present tense. That's only a small example. There's more examples. Sometimes the letter is not deleted. Another letter for the mudari is changed to a different letter. And that's what these lessons are teaching you in this book. Like the ya and the wow. We'll learn this later on. This is what we're heading to. Inshallah. I'm showing you what is important from the book related to verbs. Like how to conjugate the past, present, commandment verb. Maybe before we get to the weak verbs, we go over about conjugating 2-letter verbs. Like ja'a. How you conjugate ja'a with jittu? It's not a normal verb. Marra. How we conjugate this verb? Madda. How we conjugate this verb. Then we go to the weak letter verbs. Here we go. For example, mata. Right? Mata is mudara yamutu. Yamutu. Mata yamutu. Look at it. The aleph here and mata, which is the middle second radical. In the conjugation, it becomes what? The aleph becomes a wow. I'm just showing you what we're heading towards in our lessons. Very important for conjugating verbs. Even if you study nahu, without getting deep into sarf, or related to al-irab, fi al-nahu, you're going to learn about fi'l al-mu'tal, weak verbs, its conjugation. Why it's important? It's going to teach you why. Because you might be reading something and you don't know this is a weak verb, and you see it in its present tense form, and the letter is chopped, or a letter is missing, or added, or changed in its conjugation. If you know about weak verbs and its conjugation, you're not going to know what that word is. You're going to be stuck on stupid. Or you might conjugate it wrong. Or I'm sorry, you might understand the word wrong due to not understanding how to conjugate weak verbs. For example, here's another example. Rama, yarmi, irmi. It's commandment form. Irmi. Da'a, yadu'u, idu'u, illallah. Commandment form. And these verbs, Greek letters, have its commandment form. They have its commandment form of the verbs too. But I'm not going over it now. Why? Because first you have to build your foundation in the beginning. First you have to what? Build your foundation on what is a past tense verb? How do you conjugate it? What is a present tense verb? How do you conjugate it? What is the commandment verb and how you conjugate it? Then you step up from that, how you conjugate two-letter verbs. Past tense, present tense, and its commandment. Then you move along from that, learn about weak letter verbs because it changed its conjugation. For example, here's another one. Masha yamshi. Masha becomes yamshi. Baka, which means to cry, or he cried. Yabaki. Rawa means to narrate or view. Yarwi. Waka. Yaki. I like this word. Waka. Another weak verb. We didn't learn about it yet. Waka. Yaki. What is this commandment verb? This verb. How you make the commandment for this verb? Very important. That's why learning the basics, as I'm teaching you, or its level in its right stages, is very important. Now, when we learn about commandment verbs today, I'll conjugate this to a commandment verb. This letter has weak letters in it. Waw is a weak letter, and that ya at the end of it, ya at the qaf is a weak letter. Waqa, yaki. Do I say aki or iki? No, it's ki. 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 One letter. Ki. Sawa. Yaswa. Sawiya. Yaswa. This is not this one. This one's a little bit different. So there's a lot of things that we have to learn, but what we're learning now is going to build on that. I must have lost connection. All right, so inshallah, we're in the lesson for now. But you see, all this basic rules are building up for the future. You take what is easy and simple, and you're going to see from taking something easy and simple now becoming something big. You'll find this later on. I'm going to look at something else, for example. You're going to see all these basic rules that we learned, some of them that are written, some that I put in the notes, like pronouns. Maybe later on, some of the past rules that we learned in the past. What is ism, ajza'ul kalam, or aqsamul kalam? Maybe I will add these in the notes. But for example, some of the lessons, past tense verbs, present tense verb, commandment verbs. You're going to see later on, we're going to start adding the lessons for the weak letters, some particles related to verbs, or particles that work with verbs, some other things related to verbs, that work with verbs like particles and things like this, you're going to see, oh man, why it's so important to understand the basics. Conjugating the past tense, present tense, verb, and the commandment verb. You're going to learn it all. Okay, weak verbs. Okay, I learned about weak verbs. What are weak letters? Okay, oh, the conjugation of it changed for the present tense. Conjugation for the present tense, alter, change, something different about it. They're going to learn, I'm going to teach you the rule, inshallah. They're going to learn, oh, on the top of that, there's some exceptions to the rules. You're going to learn there's a rule, it appears to be concrete, then there's some exceptions to it in the Arabic language, like this and like that. So inshallah, we will conclude the class. If there's any questions, this is a good time to ask now. All these rules will help you in the future rules. The rule of lamb in the future. Inshallah, Ali, I see you asked that question from before. In the future. Right now, just concentrate on conjugating. So homework will be to take some verbs that you did from homework and write the conjugation, the commandment verb from the conjugation of the commandment verbs that are written out for you today, which are for the second person. Ijlis, ijlisi, like this. That's going to be the homework. Take at least 5 of the words and conjugate them also for its commandment. And that should be easy. Inshallah. Inshallah, we'll conclude the class. I don't see no questions, inshallah, so we'll conclude the class. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa shallallahu wa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.